Well, let's get straight into it. And before we get into what this partnership actually entails, give us some background into CFIT itself, very briefly, and what the company is about itself.
Okay, so CFIT was started around about the 2007 period, and we predominantly focus on in the IT and telecos space. We do systems integration as our second offering across a range of platforms, and then thirdly, we're into transaction advisory services. So if you looked at our business, you could basically say we had three divisions in one. Primarily, most of our business comes out of the IT telecos business, although that starts out of the transaction advisory services, where we structure the deal for customers and bring it all the way through the value chain to the delivery end.
Now, when we here in South Africa hear about Hyundai, we often think motor vehicle. So, how does a partnership like this make sense? Spell it out for the viewers.
All right, let's just give you a broad view, and it is really a broad view. Hyundai has got about four primary groups. The group that we started our discussions with is the IT and telecos side, but it has Hyundai Marine as one entity, Hyundai Securities. There's about several of those. It has the logistics part of it. It has the ports management part of the business. And then it has several other subsidiaries that work within the organization. It also has, like it competes with any other, and I know in this country we predominantly think Hyundai, we think vehicles. Well, you need to see the size and capacity of Hyundai. If you go to Bloomberg, that will give you an indication of what you're talking about under the organization.
So that mutual focus is certainly there. Now, let's go through CFIT and the kind of target it's stood as in the past, because we've recently seen it being an acquisition target of at least 4 international companies. Those were said to be very lucrative. Why go down this route as opposed to being acquired?
All right, the acquisitions that you are talking about, yes, those were out in the market towards the back end of last year, starting from about the September or even earlier period. We made a conscious decision. We conferred with our supervisory and advisory board, and the primary decision was we were looking at long-term gain. It would have been easier for us, and all of them were lucrative, and in the upper millions, one would call it, which was really just swallowing us up. And we wanted to be a different black entity, black-led and managed entity. Primarily what we wanted to do was to build ourselves into a stronger capacity. We had started these discussions with Hyundai. In fact, that goes way back. It goes back probably easily about maybe 5 years ago or thereabouts, even before the 2007 period. And we're looking at where does growth actually come from. We have a problem in this country where if you're acquired, then basically what happens to you, you end up at the top. And in an organization of our size, which is a smaller one, the guys who really wanted to acquire us were multi-billion size organizations. And what they were looking for was the intellectual capital, as well as the capability inside the organization. But that would not necessarily have meant that would have brought many other people into the company. And what we were about was to bring those people into CFIT and make sure that we're growing alongside us. So the Hyundai one was an absolute match for us. It was one that was just made to suit our needs.
So let's hone in on these growth plans here. I mean, what exactly are you looking to leverage off this partnership with Hyundai specifically and its expertise? And does it take you now beyond South Africa's borders?
Oh yeah, this agreement between ourselves and Hyundai is a bigger one. We've called it a region of interest, which means we will focus predominantly on South Africa as our starting point, but it is essentially an Africa, Middle East, Indian Ocean islands. So the Comores and those are all involved in that. And then later on, depending on growth, and there are targets and there are business plans that we've put together, because we've been working with them for quite some time to get to this point, we are looking at growing phenomenally. Now, to get back to your question on the focus area, we will still focus on IT and telcos, but there are 5 key areas that we are looking at. So if we look at our market segmentation, we are looking at logistics, because of the link into the Hyundai environment. We are looking at IT and infrastructure in general. We are looking at heavy industries. We are looking at the petrochemical industries or market segment as a line across all of those areas. And then there are others in the public sector. Often when people think of a BE company, they think, well, you're only going to focus on the public sector. Yes, government has been very useful. In fact, we've had a lot of support from the DTI, and we're highly appreciative of that. But in the main, what we've gone and done is we've said we're also focusing on the private sector. Why? Because if you look at, where did Hyundai start? It started similarly in a similar way as we did, but then they also focused their business on a larger section of the business. So yes, we will crisscross the two parts, which will be on the one hand the public sector, but largely, by and large, we will also be focusing on the private sector. In the private sector space, we'll be looking at financial services because Hyundai has a securities company. So we're not necessarily looking at the acquisition side of it, but we're looking at the service offerings that Hyundai, the partner that we are involved with, or direct contact point, which is Hyundai UNI, which stands for Ubiquitous and IT. That will be the focus, and we'll take all our service offerings from there, combine them with what CFIT does offer, and put those out into the market.
So that's the company collaboration that we're looking at. Let's take a look at country or international collaboration here, because you've got other partners in Avalon Biometrics, that's from Spain. You've got ESG Electronic System from Germany as well, and those are global IT players.
Absolutely.
What are some of the lessons you've learned from those relationships that you can now carry forward with this relationship with a South Korean partner?
All right, so here's where the challenges were as we were looking at who we partner with. We were looking at partners that bring credibility. Secondly, we're looking at partners that were not only interested in saying, hey, we've got a BE partner in South Africa, and by the way, park them in the corner. That's not our approach. Our approach was vastly different. We were looking at how do we merge our team, which is a small team, how do we merge that team within an Hyundai environment and then bring that into the market. Here's the difference, however. In the way our agreement was structured, CFIT has a 52% play. So we will always be the prime contractor, not the secondary contractor or the partner that needs to be put in an arrangement or the deal or a piece of paper that says, well, we've actually got our BE accreditation. We're more than that. Yeah. We will lead all of these activities in the open market. And that's what the difference is for us.
What are the chances of the tables turning on that relationship moving further down the line? Do you then stand as a possible acquisition target? And are you open to that coming to light?
Well, there's a board that also co-determines that, but I will give you my perspective on it. My perspective, and I'm sure I speak on behalf of both boards, the supervisory board as well as our value review board, because these have two separate functions. I think that if you look over the time, there are discussions, and I'm not at liberty to tell you exactly what is in the agreement, and I think you'd appreciate that. But I'll give you, and I'll share with the public what is actually going to happen. The agreement is a lifelong agreement. There are some discussions on the table that say, well, maybe down the line, how do we put these two entities together? It is a possibility, but it's not one that's going to happen at least in the next 10-year period. So we're not looking at, selling out. This is brand that we've built, and it's been a long struggle.